to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
Well, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. My name is Tom Dutta. I am the Quiet Warrior. I'm excited to have on the show today Mr. Dan Miller. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tom. Been looking forward to it.
Me too, Dan. It was a pleasure meeting you recently, and I believe I'm connecting to you from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. You're down in Franklin, Tennessee, the power of the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we're sitting right next to each other.
Absolutely. So, hey, Dan, this is all about you, so let's turn it to you first. Tell us a bit about yourself.
All right, sure. I had the privilege of growing up as a farm kid, which I think is a really rich environment. So I learned a little bit about a lot of different things, a little bit about growing things and carpentry and mechanical and plumbing, electrical. So I've used those kind of skills, but in doing so, had an opportunity to really explore a lot of different paths in terms of what I would do. So I left the farm, decided I didn't want to just throw hay bales in the heat of summer and milk cows at 5:30 on winter mornings. So I explored other things, went to school, and kept moving into the area of personal understanding, personal development. So for the last 25 years now, I've been involved as a coach, helping people who are going through those inevitable, relentless transitions, helping them figure out, who really are you? How has God uniquely gifted you? And what should that look like on Monday morning to provide work that's meaningful, purposeful, and profitable? Along the way, I've written a couple books. Writing is my first love, so I continue to write, but primarily write and speak at this point.
Well, that's pretty amazing, Dan. I mean, there's so much there already that we could tell a whole story from it. And I just wrote this note down on my paper here, going from hay bales and milking cows to milking greatness out of people as a coach.
That's great.
That's a wonderful background. And so, Dan, as I've said to you offline, that we get people on the show who are successful, but my show is not about ego, about just how great we are. It's about the backstory. But I'm going to get you into that in a minute, Dan. What I want to do, though, is build you up a bit of stuff out of your bio that I want the audience to know. So you're self-dubbed as the creative thinker of 48 Days. I know you'll get us into that. And you specialize in creative thinking for increased personal and business success. What I thought was really cool in your bio was that you believe meaningful work blends of natural skills, abilities, things like personality traits, dreams, and passions, that it's a whole package. I also took a look at some of the things you've done in the media. Most notable is you are an author, and we'll get into your book, I'm sure. But you've appeared on many media shows, including a guest on CBS, The Early Show, MSNBC's Hardball with Chris Mathews, Fox Business News, Dave Ramsey. I mean, wow. I mean, people really want to know about you as a thought leader. And so that's really impressive, Dan. And so let's get you into your backstory. Tell us where it began. Take us to the beginning.
All right. Well, this idea of finding work that matters, work that's meaningful, the seeds of that were planted very young. Growing up on a farm, seeing that as the only option. I mean, that was what was expected of me, to just do what my dad did. So there was no thought given to what do I enjoy, what unique talents do I have, what passions do I have, none of that at all. It was just, what do you do to be responsible and practical and get through life? That was it.
Yeah.
Well, I was not content with that kind of a narrow view. And so I started exploring this idea of, when I was about 13 years old, Tom, I got a hold of the little audio recording, The Strangest Secret, and heard that old gravelly voiced Earl Nightingale talk about we become what we think about. And I thought, could I really change the trajectory of my life as a poor farm kid by just controlling what I think about? So that became a real foundational principle and remains so today. But I started reading books and getting old cassette programs from people like Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and Dennis Waitley and Norman Vincent Peale, all those old masters of achievement. And it helped me realize I could shape my future. I could create the future I wanted by controlling what I think about, how I thought, how I planned, and acted on that. So that really helped me broaden. And in doing so, I discovered some principles that other people would then ask, can you help me do that same thing? Gee, I'm a dentist. but I don't think I want to do this anymore. I'm an attorney, but I think I made a wrong turn after college. So those are the kind of people that I've had the privilege of working with, and in the process continue to refine my own direction and path.
That's pretty amazing, Dan. I mean, you sent me on a journey on so many directions in my mind. I wrote a couple things down here. One of them was passions. So I'm going to just throw a few things at you and get you to kind of chime in on that. And the first one is that I've seen some science out there, particularly on YouTube, about passion. And they say that people who love themselves first, who wake up in the morning and have passions, they find the way to do things for themselves first. But unfortunately, not everybody is like that. And then in some of the work I do, I come across youth and young adults who are on this unthinking treadmill of life in a career path where somebody told them they should be, where maybe it's a cultural thing in their ethnic community where they have to follow the father figure's business. And so I want you to talk more about that, about how to break the change. You talk about feeding the brain and teaching yourself how to actually do what's important to you. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of that generational expectation, like you just referred to there, where, gee, daddy was an engineer, so I need to be an engineer. Mama was a school teacher. I guess I need to be a school teacher. And I think I had the privilege of kind of wiping the slate clean. It wasn't a happy kind of transition when I left my dad's farm. He thought I owed that to him. So that was a tough thing. But having done so, then I really had everything as a possibility. Now, I ought to be quick to add, too, time is a wonderful healer. My goodness. I mean, my dad was a great friend of mine. We were very, very close in his later years. But I really took a fresh look at what really would be a possibility for me. And in that regard, I think that's an advantage. Sometimes when somebody has good academic ability, they just keep going to school. So if you graduate from Vanderbilt, here where I am, and get a 4.0 as an undergraduate, you're going to get invited to go to medical school, to dental school, pharmacology, seminary, whatever it happens to be. What happens, here's the interesting thing. In the book, The Millionaire Next Door, Thomas Stanley talked about the GPA, average GPA of those who end up as decamillionaires, worth at least $10 million. And he found that it was 2.7, their GPA.
Wow.
What that means is somebody who graduates from school and doesn't have that high academic ability, they often find something that's more an authentic fit rather than just doing something cookie cutter that the guy down the street did. Even if it leads to another acronym behind your name, those kids really figure out something unique to them and end up being totally thrilled about what they're doing and extremely successful.
Well, that's pretty amazing. When you said that, I started thinking about people like Einstein, Bill Gates, the creator, I think, of Facebook. I think all these folks had that entrepreneurial spirit within them. And you've really given us a teaching moment there. I love the part about your dad. I mean, that's the part I was after, and you nailed it. And that, to go against the wishes of a parent sometimes is really hard. I read this in your bio. I want to just read it and have you talk to us about it. And it says, Dan believes that a clear sense of direction can help us become all that God designed us to be. And I just love the quote. Building on what you said about forging out on your own, just tell us about, if you work with somebody, say it's someone who is in that path that they shouldn't be, maybe it's because of a parent or a mentor, what tactically or specifically action-wise do you do to help people get through that to emerge the way you did?
Sure. Yeah, great question. And here's how we set that up. I'm working right now with a 42-year-old cardiologist. So he spent, 12 years after college, going to school to get to where he is, 42 years old, making incredible money. And he's been to the emergency room 3 times in the last couple of months with unexplainable pain and panic. Well, he's smart enough as a cardiologist to realize, and with a test to confirm, that it's not his heart. He's in great shape. It's other things. There's stress that's just out of control. What we're going to do is go back and take a fresh look at what are your unique skills and abilities? What are your personality tendencies? Meaning, how do you relate to other people? What kind of environments do you function best in? Then what are those recurring passions that you have? Now, sometimes, having clarified those, that should give us a clear focus for what kind of work would embrace and bring those together. If it looks like a dramatic transformation or redirection, that's fine. Lots and lots of people are doing that. Doesn't mean that we need to just negate, the high financial income that you're used to. We can figure out other creative ways to do that. But there has to be an authentic fit. Again, instead of this idea that I'm just going to pick an occupation and then make myself do well in that. That's a recipe for disaster. That's why I see 42-year-olds who are burned out, even though they're seen as having a very prestigious career and position.
That's amazing, and you made me think about even the narrative behind my show, the work that Joseph Campbell left us about the hero's journey, and that we have this call to adventure inside us, and sometimes it triggers when not so good things happen, Dan, and a lot of people don't answer it, and so that cardiac surgeon, that story sounded like that to me, that there was a wake up call. I want to ask you about this whole business that you have. I was fascinated because I saw you speak, and by the way, people should find you and get you to talk to them. It's very motivational, and I learned a lot. And you drew 3 circles on a whiteboard, and you were talking about how you created this $1 million a year income. Now, I know that doesn't come overnight, but you've written a book as well. Tell us a bit about your book and about how you actually went from being the farm boy milking cows to create that $1 million business for yourself.
Well, the book title that you're referencing is 48 Days to the Work You Love, because it outlines this process of really figuring out. And the interesting thing about that is 85% of the process of having a confidence, a proper direction in your career comes from looking inward. 85%. 15% is the application. That's really the easy part. But typically people ignore the first part. Instead of looking inward, they just look at, wow, where are the job trends? What are the hottest professions out there? What's the greatest franchise right now I can get to? So they look for an external solution rather than seeing, is this something that really matches me? I have here on our property a large cedar tree that died a few years ago, didn't come back. And so I had a lady come out. We topped it at about 14 feet, and she released this amazing eagle. The wingspan is about 6.5 feet across. And, that's not something that you're going to find in a dictionary of occupational titles. Be a wood carver. But for her, it's a unique skill that she's leveraged into extraordinary success for herself. But there has to be that kind of process to really figure out what is unique about me. So with somebody who has had a career and recognizes they maybe need a redirection, or at least to take a fresh look to confirm it, we go back and look inward first. That's the missing piece for so many people. And that's what I really kind of outlined in 48 Days to the Work You Love. Have some other books since then. No More Dreaded Mondays, Wisdom Meets Passion, Rudder of the Day. But they all are based on that core message of look inward first, and you can figure out what kind of work you ought to be doing, where you're going to have your greatest success.
I think that's just brilliant. The world within and the world without. I'm thinking about that and looking inward, and how many busy executives or business owners I've met that are not looking in, they're looking out. It reminds me of the work I've done on boards of directors, and they spend a lot of time looking into the business instead of up and out. It's kind of the other way. Very interesting stuff. I read in your bio too, and it actually touched my heart, Dan, that you've been married for over 50 years and have 14 grandchildren. Give us a bit of your secret or wisdom on that. You'll know that being an entrepreneur, building your own business, is a lot of work, and a lot of, unfortunately, marriages fail, especially in top leadership, because there's no balance between that. How did you make that work?
We're asked that a lot. Because that does kind of set us apart at this point. We realize that. Joanne and I enjoy being asked about that. And we've been more strategic about really looking at what is it that we've done. But being an entrepreneur, Tom, I love taking something that seems to be impossible and figure out how to make it work. I like doing things that don't have proven path. I like doing things that haven't been really done before. Joanne and I both came from homes with rough marriages. We decided we're going to figure this thing out. So I've been as intentional about my marriage as I have about my business. That means I look at what can I do to make an emotional deposit so I have a bank from which to draw if I screw up and make a withdrawal without going bankrupt. But I look at my marriage, not to make it contrived and structured in an artificial way, but I look at it, if I'm going to be successful, I need to be making deposits of success. I need to be storing up reserves there. So as an example, we have date night every Friday night. Now, that may seem kind of corny. I mean, our kids are grown and gone, and we could make it any night. But Friday night, Joanne's like a 16-year-old because she knows that's reserved for her. We're going to do something special, and it's focused on just us. We do an annual trip to Chicago right before Christmas. Joanne's birthday is the 22nd of December, so it was kind of overlooked as a little girl who celebrates a birthday 3 days before Christmas. Well, I make a big deal out of that. So we go to Chicago and have been for years and years and years, right before Christmas, and celebrate for about 5 days just to celebrate her birthday. Well, those things get me a lot of grace in my marriage, so that if I work late or I'm gone a couple days, it's okay. But those are the kind of things. And another word that Joanne and I really, I mean, you ask either of us, what one characteristic is added to our 50 years of marriage, it's respect. I still open the door for her. And it may sound old-fashioned. She appreciates it. I realize that. So respect. I've never talked down to her. I don't yell at her. I mean, we just do things that would make for a good relationship. And thankfully, that's been the foundation of our business. I mean, our marriage. And we have 3 amazing kids and a whole bunch of grandkids out there who we love being with, and they love being with us. I mean, our grandkids, when you ask them where they want to have their birthday party, I mean, it's not going to Legoland or Disneyland. It's being at Yaya and Papa's house.
That's pretty cool. I mean, my heart is growing. It's like that Grinch movie where his heart grew 3 sizes. I mean, I can feel that happening. I'm hoping that when we get you back in the future, you'll say you have 20 grandchildren. I mean, that's incredible. And, Dan, you gave us so many gifts there. And, as you'll get to know me and my story, I came from a difficult marriage. Well, my parents divorced, and there was alcoholism, all those things. What I really learned from your talk that you just given us is putting, I call them seeds in your subconscious mind, feeding, like you said, the reserve tank, and finding what good looks like. And, 50 years is amazing. I want to share with you a study that was done. It's a Canadian study, and I'm doing this so that I can get you to make a comment. The Canadian study was done with 90-year-olds, and they asked 90-year-olds, at this point in time in your life, what are your top 3 regrets? And after all the data came in, it was boiled down to these 3. They regretted not reflecting enough. They regretted not risking enough, and they regretted not leaving a big enough legacy. What's your biggest gift so far in your life? Reflecting, taking risks, or creating that legacy?
Golly, I love taking what other people see as risk. Now, Tom, as entrepreneurs, what other people see as risk are really not just like jumping off a cliff and hoping something happens, or going to Las Vegas, put the deed to your house down on a roll of the dice. We don't do that. I mean, we search, we plan in advance, and know that we have a pretty good odds for success. So I do enjoy that. But really, if there's one thing that I'm focused on, it is leaving a legacy. Now, I've been fortunate to have lots of people read my materials that I've had the opportunity to work with. And so I get lots of testimonials about lives that have been changed. But the most important ones are my 3 kids and those 14 grandkids. Those are the ones that I want to remember me as a man of integrity, character, fun-loving, true to my marriage and the values that I really mouthed. These weren't just spoken values. They were things that I lived out in my life. They're the ones that are closest to me. They're the ones that are going to see if I really am a man of my word. And that's very, very important to me. Having a 50-year marriage, Tom, I mean, it's like having gold bullion in the bank. And I would be an idiot to risk that, to somehow open the door to damage that with some kind of momentary pleasure or whatever. I mean, there's just so much history there. I would have to be an absolute fool to risk screwing that up. So that's important to me. And I do things to preserve that and protect it.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I just love that, Dan. I'm going to go back, listen to this again, just for that last part. I mean, when I think about how you might be blessing and leaving a legacy, if I was one of your grandkids, it'd be like, man, every day I get to see what a 50-year marriage looks like. Can you imagine what you're doing for your grandchildren by bringing that example? So I honor you for that. I also want to honor you with 4 words. I write these down as we're interviewing. They're not scripted. They're leadership words. The first one is courage. First of all, the courage to come on the show, talk about your past, and it started off maybe as a challenge, but also the courage to forge out and be an entrepreneur. Number two is leadership. I mean, if you're in the dictionary, there should be a picture of Dan under that word because you're teaching people to lead their life forward. Three is wisdom. I mean, the 50-year marriage is one thing, but holy smokes, you got a lot of wisdom there, Dan, and it's just awesome. And then the last one is passion. I'm sure you've been told this, but I can tell you the energy from you and the passion that comes out of you, even on this show, is just inspiring. So let's turn it back to you for the last word. Tell us about your body of work, where people can connect to you, Dan.
Well, 48 Days to the Work You Love, having had some extraordinary success, 48 Days then became our company brand. So everything we do is under the 48 Days umbrella. You know, I have 48 Days on my black Corvette that I drive. My wife has 48 Days too. I mean, we really have leveraged that brand and have a lot of fun with it. So it's surprising how often it shows up. So put in 48 Days any way that you want to, and it's going to go directly to our content. Another thing that I'm really excited about, Tom, and I appreciate you asking, is an online community that we started recently called 48 Days Eagles. So it's 48dayseagles.com. But it's a place for people to come together who say, I'm not content with mediocrity. I need to do something exciting. You know, I don't want to just burn the boat. I'm not going to quit my job, but I've got an idea. I'd like to put legs on it. So it's a community of people like that. Again, just 48dayseagles.com. A lot of fun happening there.
That's pretty amazing. Wow, that's awesome. You know, everybody, you've heard how to check out Dan, where to get a hold of his body of work. I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to read the book and even engage Dan. You know, Dan, I was just smiling here when you're talking about 48 days. I was thinking about the Advent calendar up on the wall here as we head to Christmas. There should be a 48 days calendar. You open up each of the one and there's a little gift to your life.
That's a great idea. See, speaking of which, I always have my goals set for the upcoming year by November 14th.
Wow.
That's 48 days before the new year starts. Golly, we're used to the 24-day Advent calendar. It'd be really easy to make a 48-day one. Great idea, Tom. I'll take that.
All right. Well, I'll look for that in the near future. So, hey, everybody, find this show on iTunes. Give it a rating so we can honor Dan Miller's work. And find that true passion like Dan did. Live with that purpose and live the life that you deserve and desire.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca